Ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited to announce that Andrew Charles is joining us on the show today. Andrew is a true unsung hero of international rugby league. He's the head coach of Chile and also played a pivotal role in establishing rugby league in Thailand. Additionally, he's one of the trailblazers behind the creation of the Jillaroos. People like Andrew are the driving force of rugby league, usually dedicating themselves to the sport out of sheer passion. We hope you enjoy. Yes, that's right. I have Andrew Charles. I've been waiting a few weeks to get him on as he's been trotting around the globe, replicating Cortez's journey over in South America or something similar to that, which I'm sure we'll hear about. Andrew, welcome to the show. Pleasure to have you.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be on. Thank you.
Great. And Stu, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, nice and warm with the sun and weather, but all good, and good to catch up with Andrew again. Andrew, congratulations on the South American Championships win. Really good news. We'll talk about that later, but I just want to sort of go step back a bit and say you actually grew up opposite Redfern Oval, so you're obviously destined for rugby league, although I do know that you're not a Bunny supporter.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a little bit of a closet Bunny supporter, to be fair. Yeah, but I do love the club. I spent 10 years with South working for them, so I do like to see them do well. But unfortunately, I was brainwashed by my mother, who was a Balmain supporter. So I used to get dragged to Leichhardt Oval all the time. So I love the eighth wonder of the world.
Stu, I'm beginning to think you're stacking these podcasts with your Balmain friends.
It's the only way you can get on if you're a type of supporter. Actually, Andrew, tell us a bit about yourself and how you came to love the game.
All right. Well, like you said earlier, growing up across the road from Redfern Oval, rugby league just came hand in hand. We lived in the Housing Commission flats there across from the Oval. So whenever South trained or they played, we're always over there. And then joining a local club, the first club I joined was Zetland Magpies, and that was in the under fives or under sixes, whatever it was back then. I remember back in those days, the coaches used to actually have to come and knock on the door. There was no social media or Facebook ads like there is these days. So you would always get a knock on the door from rival clubs in the area. There was about 4 or 5 clubs in that little inner city area, and they'd all knock on the door looking for players. But we eventually joined Zetland, and I remember there was a kid in that team named Terry Hill back in those days. Terry was a gun player even back then.
Yeah, wow, that's Terry. I love Terry Hill. It shocks me that he's passed.
It's so sad. He was a great guy.
Yeah, and the best sledger that the game has ever seen. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, definitely right up there.
Absolutely. On to my first question, though. I believe you're on the coaching team for the first Jillaroos squad. How did that happen? And tell us about that experience.
Okay, it was actually the second Jillaroos squad. 1996. They had their first official test in 1995. So I joined the year after. I was actually part of their first ever victory. That's what I can claim to. Yeah, back in 1996 against Great Britain in Canberra. And how that came about, a local women's team contacted our local club at the time, Alexandria Rovers, to train at our ground. I think they went through the alphabet of all the South Sydney clubs, and being Alexandria starting with A, they contacted us first, said, yeah, come down to Alexandria Park and train. And we're watching them train. We thought, how good are these girls going? I said to a few of my mates down there, but they didn't have a coach. So I asked if they needed a hand, and they said, yeah, sure. So started training them and playing, and then realised how good they were. It just happened to be that 4 of those players on that day were inducted into the NRL Hall of Fame this year. So they could certainly play. And then as the season went on, they must have made a recommendation to the Australian coach at the time, John Squizzy Taylor. And I got a call from John asking if I'd like to join the staff, which I jumped at. And it was 2 fantastic years coaching the ladies that later became the Jillaroos, and it's great to see them, how they've come so far.
We had Tani Norris on the show a few months ago, if you remember, Stu. And do you remember she was telling us about the struggles that that the team had raising finances. They used to hold sort of raffle tickets at whether it was Bunnings or not, I'm not too sure, but you can get the sort of equivalent of whatever it was. And Gordon Tallis once said, like, I can't believe, you have to pay for your own blazers and stuff like that. And I guess on the flip side of that, she did allude to some very interesting stories that will stay hidden, apparently, apart from this one time in Samoa. That's all we got out of her in that. Yeah, to elaborate on a story in Samoa, or do you know anything about that?
No, I didn't go to Samoa. The furthest I went was I was on the Jillaroos' first tour to New Zealand in 1997, which was a great trip. It was actually my first trip overseas. I haven't stopped.
Wow. There you go.
That leads us very well into the next question, Charlesy. You haven't stopped, and your social media is absolutely exhausting just even watching it with the places you get to. And I know your mates refer to you as the everywhere man. And in the fact, the last time we met was in the middle of Seoul in South Korea, which I think was actually a cricket trip for you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, cricket and rugby league, the two loves.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, is travel and rugby league just a perfect combination for you?
Yeah, it is. It really is. And it's all happened by accident and hasn't been designed. There was a time when I was traveling around Asia, and I attended a couple of rugby union tournaments over there, and I thought, geez, how good do they do this? Everyone's enjoying themselves on and off the field, and I thought, oh, I would like rugby league to have some of this. And so then tried to organise a nines tournament in Thailand, and unfortunately didn't get much interest at that time, but that was the catalyst to get the game started over in Thailand. So that was just through travelling and watching a few rugby union tournaments with some mates.
Getting the game started in Thailand, we speak to what I could best describe as the rugby league philanthropists. I'll label you, Andrew. And
Yeah.
I just have no idea how I would even go about getting it up and running. How did you even approach trying to get the game up and running in Thailand?
Okay, well, the first of all, I was traveling. I was traveling in the Philippines, and I was on a bus, and I saw an ad. NRL rugby league riders needed. There was some guy who was doing a local magazine to hand out to foreigner bars and restaurants, and so I replied to him and said, "Yeah, I can give you a hand with that." And so I was just writing reports on the NRL and supplying to him because he did a survey of all the foreigner areas, and the number one sport was NRL. It even topped AFL and all the American sports. So he was looking for someone to write something on the NRL. So on that, I attended the Cabramatta Nines one year. Philippines were playing their first event that they've ever been entered into, and I thought, oh, I'll go down there and watch and meet them, and I might write something on the Philippines. And I met all the guys there, and then while I was talking to them, we both all agreed that wouldn't it be great if we could have some more rugby league in Asia, and then the idea just popped in the head. Well, let's get a Thailand versus Philippines game happening. So when I went back to Thailand, I went and saw some rugby union mates that I met during my travels and joined all the dots, realised that half of them are actually rugby league players that are playing rugby union. So there was a love and a desire to play rugby league, and I went back to the Philippines and said, would you like to have a game? And they said, sure. So we set a date up in October and got it all organised over in Thailand, and the Philippines, luckily for us, we managed to get a few NRL players to come over. Being an old school friend of Gavin Badger, I asked him if he would referee. He asked his wife, Casey. That made the papers, being the first husband and wife referee. So it just sort of snowballed, and the interest created from there. It was certainly one of the best things I've done in my life as a rewarding experience, because it brought a lot of rugby league people together and into a new market. And we certainly had a really good time organising that first game.
Absolutely, and if I may sort of tread on this subject a little lightly, there was 2 Thailand rugby league organisations at one stage. Do you know anything about that period of the game there?
Yeah, I certainly do. Well, the first one was the Thailand Stars. They're the ones who played against Philippines, and it was about a year later that another organisation started. There was a lot of behind the scenes talks going on, but common ground really couldn't be found there, unfortunately. And then so the two organisations ran side by side. At one point, we saw that as a positive thing because there was a lot of events happening where when it normally would not have. So at the end of the day, Thai people were playing rugby league. It was growing really quickly, quicker than probably what both sides expected. And then eventually, without having any government recognition, the two bodies at the time got recognised by the Thai government within a week. So that really put a quandary into the International Rugby League at the time. Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier your role as a rugby league reporter for a Philippines newspaper. Tell us what sort of stories you wrote for that and how long did it last?
It started off in, I think, 2011, went for about 5 or 6 monthly issues until the owner of the magazine decided the costs were too much. It was just mostly, there was one big NRL preview at the start of the 2011 season, and then just monthly wrap ups of all the games. So that went into the 2012, just before Philippines played in that Cabramatta Nines tournament.
Yeah, lovely. That Cabramatta Nines tournament has been the launching pad of so many teams over the years. I used to go and watch Japan play there, and I think they're sort of kind of aged out, if that makes sense in the end. So I'm glad that I got to see them play. I don't know what's going on. We'll have to get someone from Japan on the podcast too. But I'll stop rambling now and get to my question. You've been involved with coaching Chile Rugby League for some time now. How did that come about?
Well, Chile, when things were not becoming enjoyable for Thailand Rugby League anymore, I took a back seat there and asked Robert Bergen if he needed a hand with Latin Heat at the time, and they were playing a Latino Nines, and he said, "Matter of fact, I do. The Peruvian team's coach is unable to make it. Can you fill in for him?" So I filled in for Peru on that tournament, which was really good. Excellent 4 or 5 team tournament. And then the following year, Robert asked me if I wanted to coach the New South Wales Latino Origin team, which was a really good concept. We had one game in 2017 up in Brisbane. And then the following year, with Latin Heat putting a team in the Emerging Nations World Cup, I was appointed coach of that team, and we had two Latino origins as well. And then following that, Chile were invited to participate in World Cup qualifiers in Jacksonville, Florida. And the president of Chile Rugby League, Rod Miller, invited me over if I could give them a hand at that tournament. So, and while I was at that tournament, I was approached by the IRL if I could go to Brazil and oversee the South American Championships there, since I wasn't too far. So once I finished Chile, I went to Brazil and did oversaw the tournament there, and I've been with Chile ever since.
Talking of Chile, you recently returned from the South American Championships. Congratulations again, because you came away with a victory. What did winning the championship mean for you and, more importantly, your squad members?
Well, yeah, mainly about the squad members. We had, out of the 17 squad, the rules are in those championships, you've got to have a maximum of 7 heritage players. So we only took the 6 over on this occasion. So 11 out of our squad of 17 comes from Chile. And with, I think Argentina only had 1 heritage player, and I think Brazil had 2. The majority of the players in the tournament were homegrown, and it really means, if you ever watch South American soccer in action, how fanatical they are with their sports over there. It really does.
Juniors.
Yeah, it really does filter down to the rugby league as well. They're really passionate. It means a lot to them. One of our moments we had over there, we had a jersey presentation, and each player had to get up and say something about themselves. And the tears started to flow, how they connected with family and why they were here. And it was a really touching moment. It had us all in tears. It was probably a turning point in our preparation, actually, that because we only had 2 training sessions, and it brought everyone really close together and what it meant to them. And seeing them win it, that really meant a lot to them because they were able to let their families know that they're representing Chile, and they won. And even on the plane home, when the domestic players were traveling back to Chile, the flight attendants got on board and mentioned it, and the whole plane started to clap. So it just goes to show,
Love that.
yeah, they all like to be associated with winners in that part of the world, and yeah, it was very well received actually.
I don't know if you remember this, but a few years now, I interviewed you for Everything Rugby League over the phone, and you were coming up to a game against the Philippines, I believe. And the Philippines had some pretty strong heritage players in them. So Chile would have gone into that game as drastic underdogs. I
Yeah.
guess it's been many years since I followed up on that article. Can you fill our listeners in on one, how that game against the Philippines went, and two, how that series in Colombia went after, which you're building up to?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, that game against the Philippines, I'd say it was a little bit of a monumental upset, especially when you compared the world rankings. I think there were 20 positions apart between the two. I think Philippines might have took us a little bit easy on that day, but certainly our guys played really well. I do recall we had a really good preparation for that game. We kept everything simple and just had one simple plan, and the guys followed it to a T, and it was a really complete performance by those guys then. And that was supposed to just be a little bit of a selection trial for that South American Championships in Colombia. And so we went to Colombia fairly confident. We had some good players go with us, but just goes to show the unpredictable nature of rugby league in South America. Brazil caused another boil over and defeated us on that day, and that was pretty heartbreaking because that was a World Cup qualifier, that game at that time. And yeah, that so the guys were pretty devastated about that, but we certainly had our chances to win that game. But Brazil played really good on that day, and we actually learned a lot from them, how they stuck together and how they just stuck to one simple plan. And we actually took that with us for the recent tournament and used it as a bit of a motivation. And we put a little bit of a score on Brazil this time, and the guys are pretty satisfied with that, to be honest.
I love that answer. What an answer. A revenge story, adversity, using it as motivation, the squad together. Brilliant answer. But
Yeah, there's a lot of good rivalry between Chile and Brazil, and I think Chile and Argentina and Brazil. There's some really good competition in that South American Championship format going forward.
well, that actually brings me a perfect segue to my next question. Being at the championships in Buenos Aires and also helping out with the running of the tournament, what insights did you get into the state of the game in South America?
Oh well, it's still developing. Obviously, it's hard for players to travel. We had Colombia pull out at the last minute due to the costs for the players. So the Brazil and Chile had to travel to Argentina. It was quite expensive. Like we had the bare minimum squad of 17. So it did provide challenges. I think this is where the International Rugby League need to step in. The Argentina Rugby League did an absolute sensational job with whatever resources they had. We all stayed in a hostel in downtown Buenos Aires, which was really good. No complaints with the accommodation, but some of the guys had to share with strangers and things like that. If the rugby league's serious, we do need to improve in that area. And mainly from a concern I have, we had to play back-to-back games. And funny enough, the team that lost the day before won both matches. But I'm here to tell you, being involved in the camp, that some of the players, it's really hard for them, not being professionals as well. to back up the next day. And we wouldn't expect Australia and New Zealand or Samoa to do that. So we really shouldn't expect these guys to do it either. So a little bit of help from the IRL wouldn't go astray. And out of respect for the tournament and these players playing, they deserve it. You know, the Rugby League's quite happy to put all these countries on their list of participants. So, you know, I think it works both ways.
Yep, fair call, mate. Talking about the RL, move away a little bit more to the World Cup. You've obviously had a lot of involvement with International Rugby League. What are your thoughts on the reduction of the men's teams to 10 for the next World Cup in Australia?
Well, I do understand it. You know, there's a lot of costs involved, and I think there was a lot of concern about the blowout scores. Now, for me personally, I think the 16 team worked fine. If you look at all the other sports, the Cricket World Cup, the Rugby Union World Cup, there's always some blowout scores in the pool games. But I think we made a rod for our own back with that one. Why not the teams that are outside the top 10 that qualified, like the Jamaica, Greece, Wales? I just can't remember the other teams. They should have all been in the one pool, in my belief. And you would have saw some competitive games. True rugby league fans would have enjoyed watching those games. And then there would have been a winner from that pool go through to the next stage. That game would have obviously been difficult, but it takes away from the romance. You know, there's always that chance, you know, and one day it's going to happen. I remember growing up, Sri Lanka used to get slaughtered in the cricket when they used to come to Australia. And then a few years later, they won the World Cup.
96.
These things can happen, and they can only happen if an opportunity is given. And we're taking the opportunity away now. And even Chile, our path to the World Cup, not there now. You know, and it's a real concern. It takes away a little bit of incentive to keep going, to keep practicing, keep investing in our local competitions over there. So, I do understand why the Rugby League has done it, but I think for the game to grow, we need to get back to 16 teams. We need to have one pool of the emerging nations in there. One team will go through, and then see how they go from there. You know, you can't stop the opportunity, stop the dream. You got to keep the dream alive.
Yeah, the worst case scenario here for me, because I a real fence sitter when it comes to this, because we had Danny Kazandajan on the show, who's the General Secretary of the International Rugby League, a couple of months ago. And he was saying that it basically stops the cycle of England, Australia, because what they're realizing that no countries are prepared to bid for a 16-team World Cup. You know, with wheelchair having 8 teams and women having 10 teams and men having 14 to 16 teams, etc. That's fine. That makes sense. I mean, France fell over with 50 million euro, you know, at the end. If, however, we do reduce it to a 10-team men's World Cup and countries like Chile start to get some funding because it becomes profitable, that's a pill that I can swallow. If we've reduced it to a 10-team World Cup and Chile still receives no money, or the Chiles of the rugby league world, that's the problem that I have. So I could see the trade-off.
Yeah.
All right. Well, my next question is, you've coached a number of prominent male and female players over the years. Are there any players that stand out for you?
Yeah, there would be. The male player, I used to coach Trent Merrin when he was a young fella at Alexandria Rovers. Trent didn't have the athletic build of an NRL player, but he had a growth spurt, and through dedication on his part, went all the way to play for Australia and win a premiership with St George. We always get a good kick out of talking about Trent and how he came from a young 13, 14-year-old to go all the way. And back in those days, the team Trent played in, we had a really strong team. There could have been half a dozen future NRL players in that squad. It was that talented. Definitely one of the best football teams that a long-standing club in Alexandria Rovers has ever produced. And Trent Merrin was the only one to go through. And he would have probably been you could have picked 6 or 7 or 8 players ahead of Trent at that time. So just to see Trent, what he did was fantastic to go all the way. It really is a a great testament to our club at Rovers and to Trent and his family for all the dedication that he put in. Also, give a mention to the Safidi brothers who play for Newcastle. One's gone to the Dolphins. I coached them at the Central Coast Centurions in Harold Matts back in 2010, and to see them have the careers they've had has been fantastic. But there's been a number of players that have played NRL through our junior club over the years, and we're absolutely really proud of all of them and still friends with a lot of them today.
Brilliant.
That's fantastic, mate. Yeah, you certainly got some good memories to look back on coaching both domestically and internationally.
Yeah.
Come to the point now where I ask a food question, and you being the everywhere man, I'm expecting a good answer here. So what I need to know is your favourite cuisine and favourite dish.
Oh, that's an easy one, Stuart. It's got to be the Thai food.
Right.
And eating a fish on the beach in Thailand with some spicy sauce, you can't beat that. However, there's a new contender after a recent trip to Chile. Had a Chilean soup called a cazuela, which is like a roast dinner in a soup with rice. It's fantastic. I recommend it highly if you're ever in that part of the world.
Repeat that for our guests. What's it called?
Cazuela. I hope I pronounced it properly.
I'm just hiding behind our guests in that question because I really wanted you to repeat it because I'm definitely going to hook that up. Actually, we are out of questions, believe it or not, Andrew. Have you got any final thoughts or anything you want to add?
Yeah, I'd like to add one thing just back on the South American journey regarding the World Cup. The World Series competition, everyone's interested to see how that's going to work. I'd like to see, as I mentioned earlier, there needs to be some investment in rugby league in South America. The potential's there. It's a working class area, big populations, physical attributes. I'd like to see a South American team be involved in the World Series along with the North rather than a North and South being separate, being together. So, yeah, if the IRL could open a door for a South American team to participate in the World Series, I think that's important. They got 4 nations. North America have only got 3. So I think they've come to earn the right now. So the IRL opened the door for South America to make the World Cup. The potential's definitely there.
I agree wholeheartedly with that. And I need to be very, very delicate with this one, Stu, because I really want someone for the Cook Islands to jump on. But if it's going to be a Cook Islands heritage team, just absolutely smashing, whoever it might be, South Africa, Jamaica, Chile, whoever it might be, for that 10th place, then that's something that I disagree with. We have a lot of Pacific Island teams in there already, and Cook Islands do a wonderful job. I need to temper my comments with that. But if it's going to come at the cost of, genuine sort of Chilean team or whoever it might be, then that's something that I have a bit of an issue with. Have you got any thoughts on that grenade, Stu?
Yeah, look, I would love to see, I totally agree with you both that I'd love to see a South American team in there. I know, having been, heavily involved with Greece in the last World Cup, what it means to players, particularly domestic players, to play in World Cups, and blowout scores and stuff mean nothing compared to the honour and the motivation they get out of being able to play in a tournament like that. So yeah, that's where I'm at it with it. So yeah, I'd love to see it.
Yeah, fair enough. And any final thoughts on this interview or Chile before we wrap things up?
No, but I'd just like to thank you guys for the opportunity. It's good to hear from different people from around the rugby league world. The game's growing. The IRL wants it to grow. The International Rugby League fan base is getting bigger due to all the, there's a number of heritage game teams now. There's a number of competitions around the world. So let's keep pushing it. And you guys do a great job promoting it. So thank you very much.
All right, Stu.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Go the Tigers in 2025. It's our year next year.
I'm losing
All right, let's end it there.
right.
Andrew, an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. All the best.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks for listening to Everything Rugby League. If you like this episode, give the show a follow and leave a review. For more news and insights, follow us on Facebook or head to everythingrugbyleague.com.